Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted, where we're all about inspiring better conversations and helping people think more deeply and critically about faith, life, and leadership. My name is Sam, and it is my honor, and I'm super excited to introduce to all of you for the second time, because this is the second time you're on the podcast, Mr. Brian Episcopo, Pastor Brian Episcopo.
Yeah, thank you.
From Appleton Church.
Thank you so much.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. That last time I was here, it was a great practice round, so I feel like I'm ready now.
You're ready now? You're warmed up. You're good to go. Awesome. Well, a lot's changed.
Yeah.
A lot's changed for both of us. We've had a big thing. The fun part about this is we have kind of like a similar, parallel line thing going on where in January I took over here at RCC, and in February you took over at Appleton Church as the lead pastor. Yeah. And is that the title? Lead pastor?
Senior pastor.
Senior pastor. Okay. Yeah. Senior pastor. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, I tell people, though, the way I phrase it is I've been demoted from youth pastor to senior pastor. I mean, fantastic. You can't take the youth guy out of the pastor. So it's just, I still have a soft spot to youth. I'm still diabolically trying to build the youth ministry by infiltrating the upper echelons of leadership in our church.
That's fantastic. That's what you should be doing, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So they'll find out probably when they get the budget this year.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I wanted to start out. I wanted to not give you a softball. No softballs this time.
Yeah,
I'm just going fast pitch. We're in major leagues, 95 miles an hour.
Thank you. I just ruined this shirt now. I'm so sweaty.
All right. My first question is this: in 6 months, how many mistakes have you made, and what have they been?
Well, I'll tell you. The one that comes to mind right away is don't make any firm commitments or promises about what the future looks like.
Right? That's probably a pretty good idea.
In fact, I just shared that with some of our staff. I got up and I shared, here's the mistakes I made in my first 6 months, because I did a 90-day update. And this was a couple months ago. And here's what I've learned. And one of them at the top of the list was don't make firm predictions. One of the things I got up and said in my first week was, listen, we're not going to make any major changes right now in the first year. Nothing really.
It's going to be fine.
It's going to be, we're just going to I'm going to learn, I'm going to explore, and we're not going to make any major waves in my first year.
I bet you everybody was so grateful.
And everybody was like, thank you for that. and then all of a sudden, within 3 weeks, just major staff transitions happened. And so it was, I actually wrote that. I said, that's one. If I do this again, I'm going to be careful to make that kind of promise.
Yeah, that's
I might even say that I'm going to try to spend the time assessing and exploring and learning. In fact, I don't even use the word assess, because that gives people little hives, because they're like, what's he, is this an interview? But it's more like exploring and learning. Those are the two words I use. Yeah. And I can still say I'm going to focus on that, but man, I probably wouldn't have made such a broad sweeping prophecy.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think as I think about the last 6 months, it's a similar thing.
You made mistakes?
I made plenty of mistakes, so many mistakes. Yeah. But it's the thing, right? You don't even know it until you're in the middle of it. And I think when you're in this mindset, you're planning for the day when all of a sudden all the decisions are on you. I think you have this mentality that I'm just gonna plan everything out, and I've got this big old future thing that's gonna happen, and we're just gonna do this, and this. I scheduled too much stuff. Yeah. We're gonna do this thing and this thing. There were a couple things that I planned to do, but I've kind of axed them from the schedule now, and I feel a little bad because they're good things, but it's just so much, and I can't You forget what it's like to speak 30 sometimes a year and then have to do those things in addition to that. And
to all the older, wiser leaders listening, you were right.
Yeah.
So whenever I said
I was wrong, you were right.
Yeah, I'm probably still gonna watch. We're gonna watch this in I don't know, even 6 months from now, and go, what the heck did we even know?
Exactly.
At any given point, I heard this recently. At any given point, your present self is a fool. If you're doing it right, you're always gonna look back and go, I didn't even know what marriage was. I didn't even know what leadership was. Every stage of that. Yeah. And that's a good thing, but the bummer is right now I'm a daft fool somewhere in a lot of places.
What an idiot! Why would he say something like that? Exactly.
People did say I would sit across from them and share what I was thinking, and they would smile and nod, and that picture of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory where the guy's just listening to that meme, Yeah. But that was also my story was, I heard a quote once, take everything you're going to do as a leader and plan to only do 20% of it. And I was like,
no way.
Challenge accepted.
No
You've
kidding.
never met me. Like, I'm going to be different. And I seriously think that's about right. That's 20% probably is what I'm actually, from what I set out to do in my first 90 days, I think probably about 20% of it really got to the finish line. I think I moved the football down the field in a lot of places, but checking it off the list, getting it to market, 20% probably.
So the second thing that I'm curious about, because this corresponds with that, is when you're trying to form culture, right? Like, we're inheriting something, and the culture is as it was. Like, how does that work into it? Because a lot of the things you want to do are the things that are going to form culture in a certain way. Yeah. And then you don't get to all those things, and you're trying to lead staff, and all of a sudden all the swirl is happening. Yeah. How do you deal with setting culture? And do you have goals for that? I'm curious what you're thinking.
Well, one of the things that goes layers on top of that conversation, that actually goes on top of a lot of things that I'm doing, is I kind of told people up front, you'll never hear me say this is broken and I'm going to fix it. Oh yeah. Because the reality is, especially having done this for the long 6 months I've been doing it, I'm increasingly slower and slower and slower to say the leaders before me had it wrong and I've got it right. Yeah. What I'm more quick to say is it was different and it was right for what it needed to be then, and we're going to be right for what we need to be now and next year and in the future. And just being really, that's so important, those words, because when you're stepping in as a leader, there are people that have moved the needle, worked hard, sweat and bled for causes that are going to shift, evolve, change, maybe even sunset in your leadership. And you've got to be careful to not invalidate the value of what they contributed to and worked hard on. So I really am careful about my language. I use words like, instead of change, fix, I'm using like evolve. Can build upon. Yeah. Not really even transition, but like shift, evolve. Yeah, it's that kind of language. Evolution, not revolution, and that goes on top of even culture too. Yeah. In fact, one of the things I've even had to do is, if I'm going to do a shift or a change, I find a word from either our values, mantras we have, or our vision statement, and I find a word and link it to where we're going differently. Yeah. So one of the things we're moving toward is doing more with digital, doing more with online, and that's new. It's uncharted. You're taking resources away. You're shifting resources, and it's new, but so I have to grab something from our past to do that, to kind of help people see it. So I use our vision statement is to connect the world with God and one another. Yeah. So I'm using things like to connect the world, which is now here and has evolved, especially post-COVID, we are going to go with it. So you're always linking it back to things that even predated my leadership.
Which is really interesting. So I'm really curious about this. I feel like post-COVID, there's been this shift in church. A couple things are happening. First, churches have shrunk in the in-person attendance almost across the board. Like, that's just a normal thing. Whether they haven't really shrunk because they're watching online or not, who knows? Like, there's people that probably know better than I do. Yeah. We have kind of some guesses, but there's also this reality that we're in a very polarizing culture, more so than we've ever been in. And the things that culturally attracted you to a church are maybe different now than they used to be. Yeah. So as you're leading a change or a shift or an evolution or whatever your thing is, and you're connecting it to a value, which is super good. Like, I've heard that exact thing and it's really helpful. But as you're thinking about that, I heard in your words that you're trying to be maybe evangelistic. Yeah. How are you, in the culture that we're in now and in the church culture that you have, igniting evangelistic, I'm going to reach people with this message because it matters? Yeah. Well, one of the things that, I'm also asking is in addition to innovation, how are we imitating Christ? Sure. So there's innovative things we can do to adapt and even speak the language of our evolving mission field and the place that God's called us to minister in, but we can't abandon the job of imitating Christ. So what are some of those things that kind of transcend the shifting tides and landscapes of our mission field that maybe we need to really lean heavily on, especially right now? Well, one of them is I don't think we're going to be less busy in the future. I think people are getting more busy, more distracted, more things are pulling for their attention. So for us, it's being
more diligent to tear down barriers of entry for people into relational community. So like, and that's
relational community. That's the specific one.
Really, yeah. So like, relationships take time; they're messy, but how can we remove barriers for that? So for us, it's taking our DNA and our vision and putting it closer into their backyard, which has a lot to do with our multi-site strategy.
Sure.
There's been a lot of conversations around the long game of multi-siting, and even just the scalability of that, the cost of doing that, and the actual fruit from doing that. What model, the franchise kind of McDonald's model, or a hybrid, or something that's more of a pure church plant where you're launching autonomous churches. All that to say, putting a group of people who now gather, the ecclesia gathering, in an area that is in greater proximity to their own neighbors.
Yeah.
One, it makes sure that group exists for mission. So it kind of purifies it a little bit. They're not gathering because they like what they get from the church. They're now doing it because they're now in a neighborhood that they weren't reaching before.
Well, they're there for the purpose of giving.
They're there for the purpose of giving. Second thing is they, they're there now 5 minutes from their door versus like 20. Because as a regional church, we have, and you're similar to this, you've got people that do make the commute, like a critical mass. Like a critical mass of them.
Yeah.
So we've said, can we take that critical mass of people? Because you do need a threshold of viability. You can't. It's hard to. I mean, you can do it like pure church plant where you send just a couple down the road, but we have like a critical mass of people that are coming from like 20, 30-minute drive, which I tell people a 40-minute round trip, an hour round trip for a single parent of 2 young kids on a snowy Sunday who isn't a church person,
so frightening.
Might as well be on the other side of the planet.
No kidding.
Like that's the pushback I initially got, was like, well, 20 minutes, that's not that far. No, it's 40 minutes round trip. And this is a person who's not a church person.
And you have to get the kids out of the car
and
back into the car.
Look, I have 2 young kids. From the moment I say, hey, kids, get your stuff on, we're leaving, add 20 minutes. Yeah, an hour, for real.
Right.
And then you want them to like serve or be involved in a small group, or then you want them to like do actual life-on-life relational discipleship and community. Yeah. No, there's no room for that. They can barely get to church once a month.
So you're trying to get church closer.
So we're just trying to bring the ecclesia, the gathering of people in the body, into a space that now is more galvanized and really aligned around missionally reaching people. Yeah.
And then, so I'm curious, like we've thought about this in the past. It hasn't been a huge topic, but it has been something that I've thought about. Like we live close to these small, very small communities, right? Like Princeton is a 15-20 minute drive from here. And there's a number of people that come from Princeton. So it's a small little community, right? Yeah. They don't have the resources in that place to have a large church. Or the kind of churches,
or even a sustainable,
exactly,
and even a robust church that can serve people at a level that would really be beneficial.
Yeah. So my question is, at the Appleton campus, which is your main place, are they excited about what they're doing elsewhere? Yeah. Oh, I mean, probably one of the biggest bright spots has been our Hortonville location that we launched in a global pandemic. Yeah. Because why not? Might as well.
Yeah. So that has been probably one of the biggest bright spots, because you're now in a room with people. When you look around, in our context, when it's a sanctuary that holds like a lot of people, so there's like 900 people there on a given Sunday in that room, you might spot a few people who are in your kid's soccer team or whatever, but it's a regional thing. When you're in Hortonville, you're there with like a lot of your neighbors, where you eat, work, play, and that's powerful for building community.
It's so powerful. And honestly, that's the thing that I love about this church the most, is because there's like 200 to 300 people that'll be here on a Sunday morning, and it's so diverse in perspective, personality, age, and it's across the spectrum. And I love, I tell this to everybody, so I'm sure people are sick of hearing me say it, but I love watching, because I know people maybe better than they know each other in some regards. Yeah. And one person has a particular political perspective, and another person, and they'll sit right next to each other. And they'll both be raising their hands. They'll be singing, and like
until they become amazing. Until they become Facebook friends.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I during the whole really political climate of COVID and all that stuff, I saw churches take one of 2 routes. Yeah. One was easy, one was hard. The easy one was to get up and say dogmatically, black and whitely, this is who we are, this is what we believe on this issue, everybody else is wrong. And it was on both sides. So it was like, everybody needs to get vaccinated, we're all going to mask up, and we're going to do this in perpetuity, and that's what we got to do, and that's the only way to be a true Christian. And then there were other people who was like, it's, we don't need to do any of that stuff, it's all just garbage, just we need to gather, the church, whatever, that's how to be a true Christian, boom. And what happens is it purged the other side
so much.
So they finally woke up one day and they're like, not getting those emails anymore. Like finally, everyone that looks like me, talks like me, and thinks like me. Yeah. Well, the problem with that is that's dangerous. I love what Tim Keller says. He says a church with controversy is dangerous. Don't get me wrong. It's soil for all kinds of division and problems. A church without controversy is just as dangerous. Yeah. In the opposite direction. And you just got to pick which danger you want. And I think a more biblical New Testament danger is the one that's full of people who disagree with each other, but they're there for the mission and who Christ is, and that's what they gather around, the person of Jesus. And I think that's
what gets me so excited.
Well, dude, that's harder. Like, why? Because I get a lot more nasty emails from both sides. I get people who are constantly wanting to meet with me and talk to me about why we need to take the whole thing and move it to the other side on both sides. Yeah. And I have to shepherd and work through that. And I get people that accuse me of not standing up for truth. Like I don't care about truth. I'm all about community at the expense of truth. Like you get that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, you at least have this beautiful New Testament church of generational, ethnic, racial, even philosophical on issues that aren't necessarily dogma and gospel, but you've got this diversity in there. And what in the world stands out like a sore thumb in our culture right now? It's a bunch of people that are doing life together, partnering together for good causes and mission, and loving each other that totally disagree on these issues.
It's incredible.
Nothing sticks out like a sore thumb like that.
But that's
so I'll choose that.
That's the thing that's so exciting about the church, if you are willing to take that step, because it's the only place in our culture
and you may
right
not
now
grow.
That you may not
grow because the churches that picked one side boomed, right? Because
totally.
it's like they attract everybody that thinks on both sides.
But for a while.
For us, for a while, right. For us, that we're trying to keep people in the diversity together and trying to be honest about our convictions and what's true, but also keep people together and be careful to dogmatically say what Jesus would have voted for and what Jesus would have, to be careful about that and do that. There's going to be a hit to our level of engagement at times.
Well, it's crazy is like the first Christians. I remember this from our history class in seminary, which is Bethel Seminary and Wabash
Wesley Seminary.
Wabash. Thanks for taking that mug. It makes me happy. Anyways, the first Christians, the only way they could describe them was as Jesus followers. Yeah. They weren't an ethnic group. Yeah. They were a conglomeration of different socioeconomic groups of people, and they're all together in this place. Yeah. And they're Jesus followers. They're what Jesus is.
And that's the only thing that brought them together.
Exactly.
They're rich, they're poor, they're foreigners, they're nationals, they're just but they're Jesus followers.
Which I love. So I saw a clip of you a while back. I know it's fun, right? Yeah. You were talking about nuance, I think. Yeah. I saw this clip of you giving a sermon, and I was like, man, that's brilliant. Yeah. So good. Tell me about how nuance, and you're stepping into a leadership role where you're trying to keep people that think that things should be the way they used to be, think that you're going to change everything and take it this new direction. How are you using that kind of an idea to navigate these kinds of waters?
That's a great question. I say often that it's dangerous to make everything black and white. It's also dangerous to make everything gray. There are things in Scripture that are black and white, that Jesus did come so we might know the truth. Truth will set us free. So he wants us to know the Father. He wants us to know some things. And I know that word know doesn't just mean academically, but there are things that we can know that are black and white. And then there are things that God reserves the right to be mysterious on. And we have to be really careful. We have to have some humility to mind the gap between our intellect, our ability to rationally grasp everything, and God, the mystery of God. And that takes some humility. And it's really frustrates a very humanist kind of modern culture where we think we should be able to figure out and get to the bottom of everything. Yeah. The ancients didn't have a problem with that. No, they were like, oh, God's mysterious. I'll never figure it out.
That's fine.
Just got to trust him.
Yeah. And doesn't mean we should stop exploring.
Doesn't mean, it doesn't take our foot off the gas pedal of exploration.
It just means we're okay with being human.
Yeah. And also getting past looking at people as right Christian or wrong Christian, just Christian, like Christian first, not right Christian or wrong Christian. You got to be really careful about that, because you can place that whole thing on their identity versus just what their view is on an issue. And that is a thing that breaks fellowship, that dismantles our ability to work together for the things that really matter in this world. And Satan loves that. Yeah, so
I couldn't agree more.
But as far as like in my leadership role right now, I would say doing a lot of what I'm doing, where I'm being careful to talk about the past as wrong versus right. That's a good example of the poetry of this a little bit. I'm also spending a lot of time reaching back and doing things that are tried and true. Like, sure. I brought back this novel, crazy idea called Sunday school. You know, like
yeah, we talked about that this morning.
So it's like, I mean, like, part of it is I'm realizing that even though I've been here at this church for almost 12 years now, I have to start from ground zero in building credibility and trust in this new chair. You know, I can say till I'm blue in the face, hey, I've been here for 10 years. I got all this experience in youth ministry. You guys know me, right? You trust me? I can say that till I'm blue in the face. There's a sense in which everybody intuitively, subconsciously knows that new chair is a whole new world. Yeah. And I don't know how you're going to I don't know how you're going to handle it. I don't know how we're going to be. I don't know how you're going to treat me. I don't know how you're going to handle this thing. So you almost start over. So what I began to do when I was preparing for this is I was thinking like, okay, if I'm a new guy coming in from Texas, somewhere totally new, what would I do? Yeah. And because that changes it a little bit, like 10 degrees, which makes a big difference, versus like, I've been here for 12 years. I got my list. I'm ready to go. I've earned my trust. They know me. I can just get after it now and start checking my list off. Nope. I would not do that if I was new from Texas. And what I would do is I would spend time meeting with people, listening, asking lots of questions, validating the good things that I inherited, that I stand on the shoulders of. Yeah. And spending a lot of time appreciating that, being grateful, celebrating, standing on the summit and celebrating some of those things, and just listening and building trust. I keep my list because I have been here for 12 years. I do know some things, there's areas of opportunity, but
it's helpful to have both of those things, right? Like if you can do it well, you can come in like the new guy and think, okay, I'm going to do this differently, or I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to walk and tread on my water and be really careful and have those conversations. Like I'm getting to know it for the first time, because maybe you never had those conversations because you didn't think you had to, but now you do. But at the same time, you know the inner workings, you know how the sausage gets made a little bit. So you're able to work through that and use that to your advantage as well. Yeah. It's a big deal.
I also, I would say this, one of the things I did early on, I accidentally did, and I would do it 100 times over again. It actually is kind of a funny story. I was lying in bed at night and I was drifting off mentally into all kinds of sin, thinking about, it was my first day in the office as senior pastor coming up. And I was drifting into this, like, I wonder if there'll be balloons. Like, I wonder if there'll be a gift basket. What will they put in the gift basket? Then I had this image of, like, I come walking in and everybody's got, like, that tunnel that they made, that human tunnel, and they're cheering for their new senior pastor. And I was, like, just imagining this, glorious self-worship kind of, kingly entrance. And thank goodness for the Lord. Like, he just took a 2x4 and just, smacked me in the head while I'm laying there. And I you don't even hear voices, but he brings back a rush of scripture as if to say, is that what you think leadership is, Brian? Yeah. Is that your definition of leadership? What would my definition of leadership look like on your first day? So I woke up the next morning, and this is true. Thanks to God. My plan was completely different. So this was God's plan. So this is God. People pray for me, and this is how it gets answered. Like, God holds back a wealth of idiocy because he loves his church too much to let me destroy it. And I woke up the next morning. I said, Hannah, we're going to Costco. We went to Costco. We bought 10 pounds of bacon, and eggs. And so I preached my first sermon that Sunday, which had a lot of pomp and circumstance around it. It's a big deal as the new senior. Yeah. And then, so it's a lot of weight. It was kind of a big deal. And then the next morning, got up really early, got to the church and just emailed everybody, come hungry, and just was in their apron, grease, making bacon and eggs for everybody.
Fantastic.
And they were like, people were like shocked by it.
That's
and
such a great
I still
idea.
get people comment on this, but I tell them like, this wasn't my idea. No, my idea was a human tunnel for my own glory. This is God's idea of what leadership is, but he's telling me and he's telling us that like, if you want to lead here, this is the tone. Yeah. This is the standard of leadership, is get in the kitchen and make bacon.
Okay.
So I would do that 100 times over again for culture. I would do that for the poetry of how to lead. I would find early on, I wrote down, find early on something that's get your hands dirty, that's really humbling, and do it quickly and early and fast, and surprise people with how low you're willing to go. How low you're willing to go.
I think that's beautiful. It's a really good comment, because I think they expect the opposite. Yeah. Because suddenly you're walking in with this role and this title and its authority, right? And that's actually one of the questions I had for you is how have you earned authority? Yeah. Because it's not assumed. It's not something that you walk in with and say like, and this happens over and over again. Like a terrible coach says, you do this because I'm the coach. A fantastic coach walks in and helps them and serves them and takes care of them, and they do it because they do anything for the coach. How have you earned and worked at? And it's 6 months in, so I don't know, maybe two things.
Yeah, there's something I got from another leader that I used early on in the first 6 months, where I asked my top brass leaders, which is like 15 people, and I said, I want you to take this survey, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really comfortable, 1 being I'm not comfortable, how comfortable are you at answering at responding to these 3 questions? The first one is I have an idea, or you say that to me. How comfortable are you saying that to me? I have an idea. Second one is I messed up. I failed. I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And the third one is you're crazy. and so on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you saying those 3 things to me?
The third one's a fun one. I'm excited about that one.
I got a solid B on the first 2.
Okay.
But the third one was like a C-, D+ kind of thing. It was pretty low. And that could be because people just want to show respect. They won't say it that bluntly. But I think there's still something there that. So what I did is they didn't know I was going to do this. So I shared those results with all staff. Like I actually said, here's how I scored out of 15 on this. And I then said, now I don't know if this is going to solve the problem, but one way I thought I could solve the problem is sharing with you a few ideas I had that we ran with that I regret running with. That God used it, but that's not to say that it was, plan A or the right call. Yeah. And so I actually walked them through just for the sake of like trying to help them understand. Like I'm aware that I will have an idea that I think is awesome, but I wish somebody would have told me it's crazy. Yeah. So I actually told a couple stories like that. It was kind of funny, and they were good. They were pretty good. And then I'm retaking that test at the end of the year. So that's one way I think you earn a seat at the table in people's lives is by leveling that playing field, making it safe for them to tell you hard things, which I actually say a lot. I say, listen, you need to tell me if I'm making it unsafe for you, tell me something hard and come up with a code for that, whatever, we'll come with something. But sometimes people need to tell you that that's the case before they actually tell you what they want to tell you. Yeah. So I that's another way I'm trying to do that. But all of that I feel like has given me permission to tell them hard things, to do this is going to be hard to hear. And rather than say, do it because I'm leader, I say it because I've given them access to do the same to me. So that's just one. I don't know if that's the secret sauce, but
yeah, no, it's really good. That. So I think I've had to say I'm wrong. Yeah. Or I was wrong more often than I ever expected to in the last 7 months. There was one instance, it was like, I'm trying to think. It was Easter. Yeah. So it was Easter. First, like big service. Mm-hmm. We pack everything up, go to the high school, 700 seat auditorium. Wow. We're doing 2 services. We're super excited about it. And there was like setup for like making it pretty when you walk in, right? And I had an opinion. Yeah. And I shared that vocally with somebody. Yeah. And it got a little contentious. And I realized afterwards, because they talked to me like, hey, that offended me or whatever. Yeah. And I had to say in that moment, I was wrong. Yeah. And it was so good because to say I was wrong is a really powerful moment for them to feel like, oh, I can call you on this. Yeah. And you're going to be willing to say. And then we also had to like come to a middle ground where we were able to talk about it and work through it. Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff that I've realized it's the side conversation, like you're saying, the water fountain conversation.
Yeah.
That like we were talking about that before.
Yeah.
But that like happens, and that's when leadership happens.
That's what moves the needle in culture.
Exactly.
Is the small stuff that people will talk about.
Yeah.
For a while. Yeah. Your words weigh 1,000 pounds, so every one matters. Everything you say, you give up the right to just externally process in front of a lot of audiences. You have to have a space for that.
Yeah.
But you give up that right, and it's a little mature for you to say, well, like, I didn't ask for that. I'm just you did. You're your leader, so you have to do it.
Yeah. All right. I've got like one more question, and we're getting close on time. I don't know if you have anything you want to talk about. Or...
Yeah, I have a list.
Okay, so. Sounds good. Well, the last thing I do want to touch on is the fact that you took over for somebody.
Yeah.
How has that gone? Because this is your dad.
Yeah.
And for me, as somebody I'd worked for 12 years, and I respected the heck out of. He's an amazing man.
Yeah.
How is that?
Yeah. Well, ours is different because you're not successor, but the person you succeeded, he's not day to day in the office.
Nope.
Yeah. So my dad is the one that I succeeded from because that's the only way I would get jobs around here. So Okay. So he's not retired. He's actually still full time.
Really?
Full time. In fact, he's in the office a couple days a week. He works from home as well. But he, which is a huge benefit because in that chair, I remind my dad when he had a 5 and a 3-year-old, his church was like 300 people. So it's just different. You're at a life stage. You have to that's not a non-variable. That's a factor.
Yeah. If you want to have a healthy marriage and life and lifelong ministry.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you don't need necessarily 2 days off per se. You need 1 Sabbath a week when maybe your kids are out of the house and you and your wife are pretty independent and you got more margin. But you kind of need a 2-day Sabbath when one of those Sabbaths is cleaning up all the housework and getting all the house stuff done that you got to do when you're a young parent.
Yeah.
So to get a true Sabbath, you need almost 2 days, one of them for home job.
Yep.
And then one of them for actual Sabbathing. So it's just different. I don't think that'll be the case every stage of life. No. Maybe. But I think it does change. So my dad, when our church got to this place, it was a little different. Now, I'm not saying my dad didn't make sacrifices and work really hard when I was young too, but it's a whole different. It's different. It's different. So he manages a lot of stuff that right now maintains a seat at the table in like the community and our global partners.
Yeah.
I can't do as much international travel that he was doing when he was in this chair. So he's able to do that for a few more years while I kind of go dig deep hedgehog internally here a little bit.
That's fantastic.
So I tell you all that to say, call me in a year because he was on sabbatical for like the first 6 months. He's only really been in the office now for about a month.
Oh, wow.
So, he was out from probably like February to like June. But I will say this is it does come down to a lot of communication with him and meeting with him. In your case, you probably are able to, you have the elbow room.
And we still meet on a pretty regular basis. He's basically an advisor all the time, and he's the first phone call I make typically, which is great because you have that relationship. It's an amazing thing to have.
I used to have in a presentation I was going to give to staff. I used to have on there, and I kind of took it off because I didn't want people to misunderstand it. But I said at times I will say, "Let me go ask my dad about that," and I'm good with it. So you can be too. Like, I'm okay with that. Meaning like, I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm not worried about that. I have the benefit of having him on speed dial and I can ask him, how did we do this in the past? What's it been like?
Totally.
So I've been able to use that. But it's still new. Like, I'm only a month into that one.
Sure.
So,
well, that's awesome.
My dad and I are both writing down, journaling what we're learning, because I do think there'll be a number of leaders, particularly there's this generational shift happening.
Yeah, there is.
And millennials are now no longer that up and coming young thing we got to figure out. They're kind of in a place now where they're in their career building years, their legacy building years. And we have to, there's a lot of boomers that are trying to figure out how to transition. And they want to transition and maybe stick around or transition and be involved, but they also don't want to be the wet blanket over the new leadership.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to try to crack that code, and I'll find out in a year if we cracked it, or at least a couple of years, because he's still got another couple of years before he's off staff.
Well, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. It's a big deal. I'm excited to hear the insight from it.
Yeah. Oh, you will. I'm sure I'll share all the dirty laundry here for the internet
Air
machine.
It out. Love it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you got, man?
Well, I was going to ask you. So What's something that when you go back on your time, you would do it 100 times over again the same way? It's something that you did. You're like, ooh, that was as close to a silver bullet as you get. I was really good to do. And when I do this again, I'm going to redo that. I'm going to do something similar to that.
There's a couple of things. One is, I mean, I got this advice from other places. It was really just, you want to honor the person that you're leaving, that you're taking over for. And we tried to do that as well as we could. I wish we could have done even more, but like, I would do that to that extent or more if I could.
Yes. That is one of the things that tells your church that it's not all about your kingdom. You're willing to put in time and energy to honor what God has done over the previous.
Well, my hope is like this church is 1,000 years, right? 200, 300 years of doing really amazing things. And I'm just a little footnote in those. And he was too. And like, that's exciting. But the second thing I've done here that I'm really excited about is I gave our church a focus. Mm-hmm. So you have a mission statement, you have values, but there's got to be like something that I'm stepping in here. We're going to do things new, but not different, right? So we had this focus of representing Jesus well. Mm-hmm. Like everything we do, whether it's on a big global level of our whole church or if it's in individuals and like my kids, I do this with my kids, we're going to represent Jesus well. Wow. And that's just a conversation. It's kind of like the nuance thing. We can, through that lens, try to think about how we're going to impact the community, how we're going to do services, how we're going to be evangelistic. We're going to represent Jesus well. So I'd always have a really focus, because the nice thing about that is it's a timeline. You're keeping it for a while, and if it sticks and you want to do more with it, you can keep it around. But it's a nice little focus thing. It's been fun to watch it enter people's words. Like they're just talking in normal life stuff, and they say those words out loud. And that's been a thing that's been really cool for us to have that focus.
That's good. Next time I do this, I'm going to steal that.
Go for it, man. Y'all
that's
got
really,
it.
Wow.
So there's my big thing. It's fun stuff, man. It's been cool to watch that evolve. And there's more to come with that. So that's a little hint for anybody who's watching.
Anybody surprise you that got onto Team Sam that was like really a blessing to you? Even if it didn't surprise you, it's just you've had some people that you want to just, I'm sure there's been a lot, but if there's been one or a couple people that you'd love to just publicly honor.
Oh gosh.
It doesn't have to be by name, but you could say like this.
So there's two groups of people. I'll say three things. So one is Mike, who I took over for, was amazing and still continues to be amazing. And he says it over and over again. I'm just here to help. Like, I just want you to see you succeed. And he says that over and over. So that's been, you never know, right? Like it's it's your baby. He's kind of letting me lead it now. And that's a big thing. So I appreciate that. The second thing though, is I did not expect the degree to which our staff would get behind me.
Wow.
They're awesome people.
That's really cool.
That's fun. They're just amazing. Like it's been fun to just celebrate them, be excited about them. They just kill it. And so to have a staff of people that is that amazing.
You're not
really
alone.
Cool. I bet. And then finally, like there's a ton, but a few specific volunteers that they are just, they show up and work overtime and don't get paid and love it. And it's amazing.
It's one thing when people believe in your vision.
Yeah.
It's another thing when people say, I don't care what your vision, I believe in you.
Yeah.
And like those people, they're, both people are good. But every now and then God brings you a group of people that say, Sam, I don't know if I care where we're going. I just want to be a part of it. I believe you've got anointing. I believe God's called you, and I'm connected to you. So you just, whatever that vision looks like, I'm in. Yeah. And that's, as a leader, you do get tender thinking about that. Like, man, that's love, that's commitment on a personal level.
Yeah.
That's community that leaders experience that's really rich for them. Obviously, there can be that can go sideways when people are all about the person, even if that they are blinded by the person's maybe character and sin issues.
Yeah.
But when that person is leading in vision, and they're not going to bat 1,000, they're going to take shots that they miss. They're going to swing and miss a few times. But to have a group of people or say, look, whether you're swinging and missing or not, as long as it's not sin, we'll swing and miss with you. We'll go down that dumpster fire with you. And boy, that does take your breath away when you realize you got people around you that are willing to take that with you.
Yeah.
It's humbling. It in some ways can reiterate the responsibility we have to do this right and to do it as well as we can.
Yeah.
That's healthy to have a a little bit of, I really don't want to mess it up for these people. I love them too much.
Yeah.
But it also gives us a little bit of like God's grace to say that, hey, even if you do, you're going to have people around you that are going to be with you.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Amen, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I feel like we have another like hour of conversation to go, but at this point, I'm gonna call it for today.
Are we filming?
Yeah,
was this
filming.
on right now? That's awesome. I thought we were just having coffee.
We were. Like, we could turn the cameras on now. Let's start. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for making the trip down to do this. I so appreciate you. I'm excited for what you're doing and what God's doing through the church and your team, and it's awesome.
Yeah, same here, Sam.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Have a good week, everybody.